Hello, everybody. Adam Parks here with another episode of Receivables Roundtable. Today, I have my good friend Brett Soldevila here from Security Credit Services, who is their Chief Compliance Officer. Brett and I have served on the RMAI board together for, I want to say, about 4 years now, and it's been great to have an opportunity to work with him. Brett's always been one of my favorite people because he has a different perspective than the rest of us. Brett is one of the few CPAs in the industry. So how you doing today, Brett?
Hey, Adam. Doing great. Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure getting together and talking, even through virtual means as we're doing now. But pleasure being a part of this series. Always good to catch up. First of the year, so it's been really busy planning my agenda and projects for the year. As that relates to compliance, that involves a series of risk assessments, surveys with the management team, and just laying out the roadmap for the year ahead. And despite all these changes that we've seen recently with the change in administration, I'm optimistic that we're going to have a productive year. Our industry is a veteran in the face of change and the various challenges, and I think we have a strong group of industry professionals and associations that I believe will roll with the challenges that we face currently and that we're still going to take on in the near future.
I think that's great. For those that are not familiar with Security Credit Services, and I'm not sure that there's anybody that watches our channel that's not familiar with SCS, but for those that are not familiar, just in case, tell us a little bit about the organization and about yourself.
Sure. So Security Credit Services was founded in 2003. We're headquartered in Oxford, Mississippi. We also have an office in Atlanta, Georgia. We're a national debt buyer. We purchase defaulted receivables made up of various types of asset classes, which consist of both consumer and commercial accounts. We also work with third-party collection agencies and law firms throughout the country, which assist us with the collection process. Myself, I've been with the company since the tail end of 2012, so that equates to roughly 8 years in this industry. So prior to joining the receivables industry, I worked for a CPA firm and then moved on to a global company that offered residential and commercial services. But all of my prior experience was focused on internal and external audits. And I think that's something that really assisted me in having a fairly smooth transition to SES in this industry, just given the need for oversight in our industry.
Mhm.
I came to this industry. It was shortly after implementation of the Dodd-Frank Act and then the CFPB. So, looking back, there's been some significant change on the regulatory and compliance front since I joined the industry.
So that leads me to a very important question, right? So now that you've been in the industry 8 years, and it's been kind of the 8 years in which compliance has really been at the forefront of the space, what have you seen in terms of the evolution of compliance across the industry?
Great question. With compliance, I think one thing that I could point out first is that no compliance officer or compliance department has really the same role. I
Mhm.
think that that's true regardless of the type or size of your company. Obviously, compliance roles will differ between debt buyers, collection law firms, and agencies. But even among debt buyers, company structures can require vastly different sets of controls to be in place. We all operate under this one common umbrella, but the details within can be much different. When I first started with the company, I was in a new role for the company. You look back 8 to 10 years ago, many companies did not have a person or a department that was solely dedicated to compliance.
Mhm.
And then with all the regulations that came about during that time, as well as best practices being pushed out by industry associations, such as what was once the Debt Buyers Association, 8 years ago,
Mhm.
they were in the process of implementing their certification program, which is now soon to be on its ninth version, which, among many other things, require that certified companies have a designated chief compliance officer. So, all of this resulted in a significant time of change and
Mhm.
for many companies in the industry. many companies were suddenly in a position where they had to implement a formal compliance program. And so, I guess it goes without saying that all of this was a lot for me to digest at the time. If I look back to when I first started, my question was, where do I start, with all of this? And, I wasn't familiar with the endless amount of regulations that the industry was faced with. Personally, I found the DBA certification program and their standards at the time, now known as the Receivables Management Association. That was really a great starting point or a baseline, for me to build our compliance foundation on. I don't say that because, like you already mentioned, our involvement with RMA. It's just the truth. It really helped me take that first step. And I think, fortunately, there's many great resources in our industry. We have several great trade associations. I think being in compliance in this type of role, it's important to continue to research additional resources on how to build, a strong compliance department. As the environment for anyone in compliance, it's not about to get any easier. We may soon be facing a similar shock to what we all, encountered after implementation of the Dodd-Frank Act in 2010.
Yeah, I don't think anybody really knew where to start back then. It was all new, and everybody was trying to kind of bring things together on the fly, so to speak. And I know that even the organizations that were already doing things the right way, quote unquote, were also now tasked with documenting what that looks like, but without understanding really what the standards for documentation were going to be. And unfortunately, we had to learn through enforcement actions. However, I think at this point we've got a much stronger standpoint. The RMAI certification program definitely being a big part of, I think, bringing organizations to the level that they needed to be to. I think that's a great first step, and I agree wholeheartedly that everybody needs to be researching various pieces above and beyond, kind of what we had seen back then. So, considering that we have a change in administration and, everything that's kind of happening in the legal environment, what do you envision the future of compliance to look like?
I
Not
think
too
it's
broad of a
all,
question.
yeah, just loaded me up there. I think it all revolves around technology. I think the same can really be said for whether it's compliance, for operations, for any department in your organization. You know, for compliance, I'm not saying that we have to get rid of all the Excel spreadsheets just yet, but think about the efficiencies that we can gain from technology. Is just paramount. I think that it's especially true for the smaller to mid-sized companies in the industry. As we continue to be faced with more regulatory requirements, we either have to add on more full-time employees, or we can leverage technology that can not only take the place of several full-time employees, but also take away that possibility for user error, provide capabilities that we haven't had previously, that could relate to the way we analyze and report on data, and that would in turn help us achieve better profit margins, while also providing consumers with a better experience. You think about, say, traditional banking. That's something that's been evolving for years now. I don't know that we'll see too many brick and mortar banks in 10 to 20 years, just in light of fintech and tech companies like Apple and Google getting into the finance space, and you're seeing more digital payment options. You can already do all of your banking on your smartphone. And I'll see what else. I think we'll also see, many companies continuing to conduct a remote work environment, or at least some type of a blended version post-COVID. I believe that many companies realize that operational efficiencies, actually went up while employees work from home. So, if that's the case, then why would you pay the additional expense for a large office if you can either, continue to operate at an equal or greater level from the pre-COVID days when all employees operated in-house? It just doesn't make sense. I know you've talked about AI, artificial intelligence, before. So I think that's something that definitely will play a factor. I think it's going to play a role in call centers and in other areas of organizations also. Just given that so many meetings are kind of we're doing now, this virtual experience, yeah, I think this type of setup is going to create some type of fatigue just due to lack of physical proximity that you would
Mhm.
have, when meeting face to face. Because in my opinion, the virtual interactions are just not as good as meeting in person. So I would say look for AI to, or other types of technology to play some type of a role in humanizing the virtual experience. Of course, we have communication channels such as text messaging, email, social media that have been in existence for really quite some time, but many participants in the industry just have not implemented these technologies due to regulatory concerns. So, now that these communication channels have been built into the CFPB's debt collection rules that were recently issued, I think companies should, currently be researching approaches for how to implement these types of technologies in the near future if they haven't already. Um, so I think all of this really will make cybersecurity more of a focus for compliance and IT departments. IT departments need to ensure that adequate controls are in place for the remote working environments. Really look into how to leverage technology that can enable companies not only to be secure in these remote working environments, but also more efficient. I really can't imagine what other types of technology we may see in 10 to 20 years. If you look back 20 years ago, it's just wild to think about how much technology has advanced in that since then.
Does that mean you remember back when we had to push 8 buttons to send a single letter text message and kind of where we're at
Right,
today?
right. Back when we had backbones and didn't have the cell phones and
Exactly. Well, I
like
mean,
we do these days,
it's
it was
hard to
different
even imagine what's coming
not
down
long
the pipe
ago.
at this point.
It really is.
Some sort of glasses. I mean, we've seen so many different attempts by different organizations to go into augmented reality and all these other things, and I'm curious about how all that goes. And then I'm also really curious, and just to kind of get your thought on this, but what's the effect of cryptocurrency ultimately going to be on the debt collection industry with Bitcoin breaking 40,000 in the past couple of weeks? How does that start to come into play in terms of new technology? Right. I'm not asking specifically for an answer today because I don't know that any of us really have an answer, but just wanted to kind of bring that up for people to think about in the future.
Right. I think there's just endless possibilities. It's difficult to really understand and know what's to come. But I mean, that's a great point. It's just so much we can consider. I think right now we focus on, what, especially like when I mentioned the email, the texting, the social media platforms. I think as it pertains to our industry, I think that should be really a focus because I don't think that those technologies are really being utilized, to their full potential. Mainly because of hesitation to the regulatory environment. But I think that along with AI, combining those components, I think that could really make operations much more efficient and compliant at the same time. So I think that's really maybe one of the first steps when it comes to technology that many companies need to be looking into.
Well, a lot of great information in a short period of time, Brett. I really appreciate you coming on and participating in Receivables Roundtable. It's, having guests like you that really make this whole thing worth doing. I feel like I learn a little something from every conversation I have with you and greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. Thanks again for having me. It's always good connecting and definitely look forward to meeting in person soon. Hopefully that's at the RMA conference and some of the other conferences ahead. We definitely have challenges ahead of us, but I think we are fortunate that, we have a lot of very competent, very good individuals in our industry. And I'm optimistic that, we're going to move forward as long as we continue to work together. So thanks again.
Absolutely. For those of you watching, if you have any questions or want to start a discussion chain below, Brett and I'll be happy to answer questions and participate in the chat below. If you have any other guests that you'd like to see me interview or topics that you'd like to see us cover, please feel free to shoot me a message or leave a comment below. But until next time, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks so much. Thanks, Brett.
Thank you.